April 21st, 2021, 13 hours, 39 minutes, 51 seconds.
Gaston County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
Ma'am, I'm at the intersection of 321, Chester and Radio Street.
Late 2019, going into 2020, the state of Colorado became what some believe is the first to ban statewide the practice of booting an occupied vehicle. Just what you're about to hear with this audio courtesy of Louisiana-based owner-operator Glenn Keller. Regular Overdrive readers may be familiar with him from past coverage of his leased operation. Keller wasn't in Colorado when this happened last month, though, but back in Gastonia, North Carolina, where he lived for a time and where his father-in-law still lives.
I'm sitting here in my truck waiting for my father-in-law to bring the clothes from a cleaner, and a tow truck came up behind me and just put a boot in there with me sitting in my truck.
Okay, is the tow truck still there?
Yes, ma'am. As a matter of fact, they're doing the same thing to somebody else. I'm sitting in my truck with the motor running. I stopped here so my father-in-law could go get my stuff out the cleaners, and they're putting the boot on my truck.
Did they say why they put a boot on your truck?
They say it's on private property, but this is a parking lot behind the store because I normally eat at the little restaurant behind me. And I'm sitting in my truck with the engine running, and they didn't come and say, well, can you move? They just pulled up behind me and put a boot on my truck.
Okay,
the rest of this 911 call is, well, not as understandable, as the situation began to escalate as Keller asked for police assistance, which he ultimately got.
Just in front of my truck. Yes, ma'am.
What's the name of the tow service?
I can't see. It's Southside or something. Southside Towing.
Okay, what's your name?
I'm Todd Dills, your host for today's edition of the Overdrive Radio podcast as usual, and we're going to talk further with Keller about just what happened here, as it's yet another example of tow and boot operators in some locales all across the country whose plenty aggressive tactics are inspiring angst among folks like him. And not just angst, not just anger, nay, rage might be the better word there, and there's fear, for sure. In Keller's case, it wasn't just a single tow truck that showed up, as you'll hear. He was pinned in front and behind. And were it not for the police showing up when they did, well, things could have gone all sorts of sideways. Keller's at least hopeful his post-incident efforts will have a lasting effect where this incident occurred in Gastonia.
And I hope so bad that they just put an FBI agent behind the wheel of a truck and just let him pull up there for a few minutes and they'll find out everything they need to know.
And yeah, that's what his voice normally sounds like, without the modulation and without the angst, the anger, the rage, and that fear I mentioned earlier.
Go get my clothes out the cleaners. God.
Before I hand it off to him for an update to get the story going, here's a brief word from Overdrive Radio's sponsor.
First Guard provides commercial truck insurance to leased owner-operators done right, as we've done for more than 80 years. We provide physical damage and non-trucking. Many companies make you pay up to 6 months of insurance premiums up front, but not First Guard. We bill monthly, so you get quality insurance without needing to pay a lot of cash up front. Go to firstguard.com. That's 1stguard.com. First Guard. We speak trucker. Let's talk.
I'm sitting at the dock. I was in the shop for 5 hours. I could have finished it there, but I never knew when they was going to say, hey, I'm finished.
Yeah. What kind of work were you getting done?
Oh, man, I got all new trailer tires. Four trailer tires put on, all new brakes, and one tire on the truck.
Some stuff you'd been planning to do for a while, I guess?
Well, when it get to the point where it looked like, what they're wearing, where I could be stopped and get a violation, rather get to that point.
Yep.
When it gets there, I just go ahead and replace them all. But I'm here to have that bright red 2014 Freightliner Cascadia. And I came really, really, really close last year when they were talking about the PPP and all that, of just going ahead, hey, this would be a great time to buy a new truck. And it was a great time to keep the truck I had and fix it up.
Yeah.
And and I got a new 2019 trailer, Vanguard trailer.
You're running with your own authority, right?
No, I don't have my own authority,
Okay.
but I felt like it was more beneficial to do it the way that I'm doing it, because there's companies out there now that's offering you 90% of what the load pays, and with that, I rather for the 10% I get a whole office working in the background with my own authority. Then a whole lot of that stuff would fall on me. So for the 10%, that works.
Right. If you're set up like that, I'm guessing you're probably responsible for a little more of the insurance than a company that paid like a 75%. I know sometimes that's kind of like the old traditional like 75-20 or 80-20, 75-25, and then the company takes care of the liability insurance.
Right, but I pay a portion of the liability insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much as I would, not even close to what I would pay if I had my own authority.
I got you.
And I always did carry my own insurance on my truck, even though they offer it if you want it.
Yeah.
But nobody still comes out, because some of the other bigger companies out there, they're actually wanting 35% to lease to them. And when I put a pencil to that, basically, if I gross $200,000, I'm giving them $75,000 just to have their name on the door. So the same $200,000 here, they're getting $20,000. So big difference.
Right. What's the company you're leased to?
Right now, I'm leased to Fifth Wheel Transportation.
Okay.
But there was a company I had been with for 4 years. But I'm hopefully sometime by the end of this month, beginning of next month, I'm gonna go back there. It jumped ship a little too early.
Changes are in the offing for Keller, it sounds like, with hindsight. The Louisiana-based owner-operator is married to a woman from Gastonia, North Carolina, originally, where this incident in question today occurred in late April, as I said at the top. Keller gets through the area regularly on runs from his home base toward the Mid-Atlantic and back, and knows it well. On the day in question, he was coming through, making a stop to pick up laundry he'd dropped off the last time through, with the help of his father-in-law.
I had some dry cleaning in the laundry there.
Okay.
And I had asked my father-in-law to meet me there at this parking place so that I could give him the money. He could run over and get my dry cleaning, and then I could head on. My destination was Louisiana, but I had minimal time, and so he was willing to do it. So he came over. He met me there. When I pulled up, he was pulling up at the same time. And he went over to get the laundry and came back, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, but there was somebody else named Glenn Keller, and it was their laundry. And so I had to send him back over there.
Wow, that's amazing. So there's two Glenn Kellers using this laundry in Gastonia.
Right. And when I looked at the clothes, I'm like, no. But when he left, I'm still sitting there behind the seat of the truck, and I'm okay. Soon as he comes back, I'm thanking him and I'm gone. And a tow truck, a regular tow truck, not something that you pull semis with, just a regular tow truck. The guy pulled up in front of me, and I'm thinking, okay, he's about to tell me I can't sit here. And then he started pointing toward the back of my trailer, and I'm looking at him because he's pointing so hard. I finally turn around and look in my mirror, and another tow truck, a regular tow truck, had pulled up behind me, and they have these little hooks on the end of cables. So he put the hook on my bumper, then he gets out and walk up and say, "Don't move, you've been booted." And I'm like, what? And I probably shouldn't even say this in public, but I really didn't know what was going on. And when I saw those hooks on my bumper and them trying to block me off, I put my truck in gear. And had it not been for maybe some good graces, I probably would have been dragging this little tow truck down the street. Mm-hmm. But it didn't happen that way. But I did try to maneuver to get out the way because I really didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And then the guy who pulled in front of me, he got out and he like walked up to the grill, and he just kind of figured because he was standing there, I wouldn't move. So again, I'm feeling trapped here. So I'm like, well, he'll move. He's not going to stand there and let me run over him. And so he did move, but there were 3 tow trucks out there, and they finally just got me boxed in. And you've heard the 911 call. It was pretty frantic.
Hello?
Were you hooked up to him?
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
What's your name?
my truck. You better You didn't have to hook up to my truck. Can somebody send the police over here, please?
I wanted some police, and I wanted some police right then.
So tell me about where exactly you were parked. You know, it's I know from talking to you before that it's a like what is it like? Where were you? You weren't a parking space exactly? Like, was it it was private property apparently, but it didn't look that way, right?
Well, and this is what makes this whole place weird, because when I lived there, this is where I had in a little agreement. There's a store there and a gas station, and then there's a street right behind it, and then there's a little Mexican restaurant. Mm-hmm. And when I lived there, there was a little agreement. I would buy $50 gallons of diesel from the guy, and he would let me park there. But I found out from talking to the police officer at Gastonia Police Department that that's 3 separate pieces of property. He owns the store, and then that's one piece of property. He owns the gas station, but it's a separate piece of property. But there's a street that runs behind it. There's a stop sign at the end of the street. There's a U.S. mailbox sitting on the street, but evidently the street belongs to him. And when I talked to the police officer, I told him I thought that was odd because, yeah, there is an issue when you're on private property, because part of the ordinance for Gastonia was that if someone's on the property during 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., that the owner has to call the tow company and says, hey, somebody's on my property, I need you to tow them. Mm-hmm. A tow truck company just can't just show up between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and try to tow anything. So as the discussion became a little heated with the police, one of the tow truck drivers told the police, well, I was sitting up there watching him, and he had been sitting there 30 minutes. I'm like, well, if you were watching me, why you didn't just pull up and say that, okay, you can't park here, you need to move. Yeah. But that wasn't the case. And I ultimately found out that they feel like, because there was a little sign on one end and there was a little sign on another end, but because the signs are there, they can walk up to the vehicle with you in it. And if it's sitting still long enough, they can put a boot on it or whatever they want to do without informing you that you need to move.
Right there is where a statewide prohibition on booting an occupied vehicle like the one Colorado passed a year and more ago could come in, of course. There's another way out of the booting charge, too, with research and persistence, as regular readers might also remember from the case I wrote about that Leander Richmond's Eagle Express driver had not far from the location Keller is talking about here. That's the lot at 1545 Rankin Lake Road, just off I-85 at exit 17 in North Carolina there. Richmond was refunded a $1,600 booting charge after working with Gastonia officials from afar at his home base in Michigan to determine no parking signage there didn't comply with the city's ordinance itself. Keller in past was towed from that lot too, and he wasn't surprised to know about the signage, most of it next to invisible and blocked from view by trees. As for Keller's current situation, the signage posted, he wasn't sure about it.
I haven't had much time to research it, but in conversation with the police, who did go over and talk to the owner over at Southside.
Southside is the towing company that surrounded Keller's rig in this case.
That the signs could be more legible. They could be a little more understanding than what they are.
Right.
And for all intents and purposes, where there are, you see a red sign, something you could see it and not see it. But I'm thinking at night, you can't see it. You don't even know what that is when you're pulling there trying to take a break because you've been driving the past 8, 9, 10 hours.
Right. This was daytime, though, when you were there, right?
It was daytime.
Yeah. We're at a stalemate here with 2, 3 tow trucks pinning you in. You got officers that show up. What happens next?
Well, when the officers showed up, there was four patrol officers showed up, 2 cars. And they tried to explain to him, because the ordinance is kind of specific. There's things that they could do between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. that they can't do between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.
Right.
If it's after 7 p.m., it's hard to get in touch with an owner and all that kind of stuff that it would take to do a tow. So they can go ahead, if they find it on a piece of private property, and they have like a contract with the owner, because this does require a contract with the owner, then they could go ahead and tow it. But again, during that 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., they can't just do it. First, it has to be the owner.
Right.
And then once the tow truck or whatever does come, if it actually is going to require being towed, then the Gastonia police have to be notified. They can't just hook up to it and pull it because the owner said so. If it comes to a tow, the police have to be called. And I think the thing that got me released was they didn't do any of that.
And you were in the truck. I mean, that's always the sticking point for drivers that this happens to, particularly at night when they're asleep. You don't really hear about a lot of this happening in the middle of the day when the driver is sitting upright and awake in the driver's seat. This is pretty aggressive behavior here. Apparently, though, perfectly legit in Gastonia to boot or hook to a truck when the owner is in the truck. That wasn't really what the issue was here, right?
Well, I overheard a conversation after the police convinced him to release my truck, and the 4th patrolman showed up. He wasn't accepting what they said. A sergeant showed up. He just flat out said told the sergeant he didn't want to talk to him to get a captain out there. And it was when the captain came out, it's like, okay, this is how it's going to go. Unhook the truck or you're going to jail. And he's still going to get unhooked. That's what it finally took to actually get the thing off of my truck.
Wow.
They had to threaten to take him to jail.
Yeah. What would the charge be there? That's pretty bold on the part of the officer. Right?
Well, he would have been in violation of the actual ordinance that said that he had to be contacted by the owner and he had to contact the police department. So as a matter of fact, I had spoken with the police the week after, and he wanted to know if he could put my name on an arrest warrant. But once they went to the district attorney with what it was that they were doing, had he actually taken the truck, then they could have went forward with the arrest warrant and arrested him. But because they had to let me go, then there wasn't enough. But two days after my experience, the reporter from the news station there in Charlotte, I had sent them the thing I had put on Facebook, and they reached out to me because they said that it was unusual because there never had been a truck released before. Say normally in Charlotte, whenever this happened, the police would show up and say, "Hey, you're on private property. This is a civil matter," and the police would just drop it.
Right.
So I say in this particular case, the guy was a little on the other side of the line regarding the ordinance and the law governing what they could do and what they can't do.
Clearly, Gastonia's got an issue, and Charlotte itself. I've heard some bad reports about private tows there as well. Both cities clearly have an issue, but this is yet another example of at least Gastonia kind of being helpful, at least in terms of the police there.
Well, I know that when this first happened 4 years ago, I did leave the truck. I parked it. I was gone all night. Yeah. I came back the next morning. It was gone. Right. I called a little phone number on the sign or whatever, and they told me it's going to be $3,000 cash. No credit cards, no check, $3,000 cash. Which this came up with the Gastonia police because I told them that's what they do. Everybody has to pay them cash. So the sergeant at Gastonia Police Department said they were in touch with Treasury as well, because the night my truck got towed, the guy said I was one of 5 or 6 trucks that got towed. So you're talking about $18,000 in one evening of pulling people's trucks. What did he want
to charge you here this time?
Well, he was kind of upset about the police being there, so he told me $5,000. I mean, he just said it's going to be $5,000 to get your truck back when he thought he was going to be able to pull it. Right. He didn't like the idea of just stepping up in front of my truck, and I didn't move. I didn't stop moving, and so he didn't like the whole thing. So he did, in the midst of all the confusion, he did end up putting a boot on my truck. But with me moving back and forth, it pretty much just broke the lock off. So that the boot, he ran a cable through my tires and through the frame of the truck, and by me backing up and pulling forward, it just snapped the lock. So he kept the hooks hooked on the back of it.
Right.
Like if I was going to leave, that really wasn't going to be something that would have stopped me.
Man.
But I said, I actually, I was home last week and I went to the field office of the FBI and had a conversation with them about the whole thing, because to me, it seems so mob-like, like mobsters in a movie or something that you would watch.
Sure.
And it reeks of something that I don't know the exact definition of extortion, but like I told the police and I told the FBI, I'm like, okay, the truck and trailer is mine, but I could have in upwards of over $100,000 of somebody else's property in that trailer, and they know it. And they figured out that all we need to do is snatch the trailer, and just like a bunch of guys in a dark room somewhere where we've got your property, and if you give us $3,000 cash, we'll let you get back on the road. It's just exactly, that's what it looks like to me.
It is like it's chilling type behavior that and in this case, because of your persistence or your insistence on calling the cops and getting those folks involved, and the fact that they apparently know the ordinance,
Right.
probably a reason for that. They probably have to deal with this on a daily basis, it sounds like, of some of these companies in that town. It's fortunate that it worked out the way it did. But when you talk to the folks at the regional FBI there, I mean, what did they tell you?
Well, New Orleans is where I live, so that's why I went where I live. But earlier today, matter of fact, I got a call from a special agent in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he said they had ran it up the chain, and he got the information, and he got in touch with the people that I had talked to at the police department about it. And he said what the FBI did was promise the Gastonia Police Department that if they needed any assistance or help on this, that they would be able to step in and offer that. And I hope so bad that they just put an FBI agent behind the wheel of a truck and just let them pull up there for a few minutes, and they'll find out everything they need to know.
Right. Sounds like there's a multitude of places in Gastonia where they could do that pretty simply, right?
Right. And okay, two days later, it was on the news. The guy interviewed me by Zoom. I was in Louisiana. A guy that does this Channel 6 news, the 6 o'clock news on Fox 46. And so he went to Gastonia to talk to this guy that owns Southside. But it just so happens while he was in Gastonia, they were back on that lot doing it again. So he was actually able to cover it live. And so now, if nothing else I have said has blown your mind, here you go. Another guy got caught the same way I did.
Same place?
And the same place. But I don't know the end of that story, but I'm not sure whether he was able to get his taken off. But, I believe this is only because what happened a couple of days earlier with me. They put a boot on his vehicle. They told him it would be $750 for them to take it off. But if he were to call the police, it would be another $1,000. And that's on the news. That's on live news.
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. And Keller's not. Box truck driver DJ Durham, 2 days after Keller's incident, in fact, does tell the reporter that Southside Towing claimed it'd be an extra $1,000 if he called the police, which he did, to, quote, make sure everything's going 100 and that it's legit. You can see the video of that news report yourself via the post that houses this podcast on overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio. Durham wasn't taking a break, but said he had pulled off fearing a maintenance issue.
And one guy said he just pulled off the road because something was going on with his truck. He wasn't trying to park. He just needed to get off the road because something was going on with his truck. Booted.
Jeez.
But it's predatory. It's a scam because say the guy that was trying to boot me, he can't tow my truck. He doesn't have the equipment to tow my truck. And this is my own thinking. I've been driving 30 years and I've had this happen to me. So he runs around with his little bitty tow trucks. And if he could put a boot on it, that's $750 in his pocket. If he could get it towed for $3,000, $5,000, he's got to call somebody that has a record that can pull a tractor trailer. But then now they get to split what was cash money. and the IRS is not any wiser.
We've got lots of things possibly going on here, not only a violation of the local ordinances, but tax cheating and yada yada.
Tax evasion, extortion, illegally detaining. God. But I'm not glad it happened to me, and I don't know how well you know me or whatever, but my life has been toward helping people.
Yeah.
And this my whole life, through the ministry, through being a speaker and a trainer, most of what I do is trying to help people. And I look at this thing, Todd, we're the good guys. We're the guys and we're the ladies and gentlemen that make sure the groceries are on the shelf, that make sure the clothes are on the rack, that make sure the new car's on the lot. We're restricted. I won't say restricted because our laws. We can only drive 11 hours a day. We can only drive 8 hours at a time, and then we've got to stop somewhere. We have to stop somewhere. It's not we ought to stop. We have to stop somewhere.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the night, you're tired. The truck stops are full. The rest area is full. Hey, man, that's the spot to park. And then you wake up with a boot on your truck.
Do you did mention, I sent you that link about what Colorado's done over in that's related to the issue of booting a vehicle while the owner is in it. Is that something that might not really that might not even necessarily help in a case like this? I don't know, but maybe it would. That would basically require them to give you the opportunity to leave.
Well, I think that would be a good thing. I overheard a brief conversation between one of the tow truck guys as I was pulling off. He was asking him he was trying to ask the police after the fact, well, what did we do wrong? What do we have to do next time not to have to go through this? And the very first thing that the police told him was the guy was in his truck. The guy was sitting behind the wheel with the motor running. You can't do that.
Okay.
And I was sitting behind the wheel with the motor running. Well, evidently, and he said they're working on having that changed. Evidently, because there are signs there. And like I say, I mentioned to them more than a couple of times, like, well, man, if I couldn't have been there, all you had to do was pull up and say, move. I was fully prepared to move. I knew the signs were there. But another thing that the police told him, he said, parked is somebody stopping a vehicle, turning it off, getting out of it, and leaving it. That's parked.
Yeah.
If somebody's sitting in it, that's pretty much what it is, sitting there. Which I think even with meter maids or whatever, if somebody walks up and you're parked somewhere, okay, you're gonna have to move along.
Right.
They don't just walk up and write a ticket and stick it in your windshield, which you're sitting in the car. I went from the police department to the FBI, and I'm still considering going to a congressman and my senator. And if I can, I guess I was going to reach out to the Department of Justice, but I guess if you go to the FBI, that is the Department of Justice. Yeah. But like I said, when I did the Facebook post, and over 1,000 people shared that, and I kind of ended that with, just keep sharing it. And eventually, it may end up on somebody's desk that says, okay, they can't keep doing this. Even with the having to knock on a truck, it would just seem like if you stopped the truck and it was loaded, that, okay, you could give them a citation, but you can't detain them.
Right.
Because we're all headed somewhere with something that somebody needs, every one of us, or we wouldn't be doing it. Right. We can't just be somewhere riding around with empty trailers, but we're not. We're riding around with all the stuff that everybody needs for their day, for their self, for their home, for their job, everything. We've got it.
A big thanks to Glenn Keller for his time and generosity with his story. Check out the show notes wherever you're listening for links to coverage of Colorado's move to ban booting of occupied vehicles statewide, to the news report that Keller mentioned, and more coverage on this issue. And thanks for listening. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. The podcast is edited and produced by myself, Todd Dills, with no small amount of support from Overdrive Extra contributor and Muller trucking hauler Paul Marhofer. Overdrive editorial director Max Heine, social media coordinator Holly Young, and news editor Matt Cole. Till next time, keep it pro out there.